Hey everybody, welcome back to One Seed, One World and the greenhouse build. So today we're working on doing the rafters. And I've already got a few up that I started yesterday. I'm going to finish them up today and kind of tell you what I did to get where I am now. So doing a gabled roof, and there is of course a pitch to your roof, and there are different pitch calculators out there online that you can use to figure out what the pitch of your roof is or what you want it to be. There's also a formula that you can use to figure out the hypotenuse of your triangle, because it's when you figure out your pitch, you're actually figuring out a triangle. Anyway, hypotenuses and all that don't quite work for me too well. I did try using one of the online calculators, but something was not quite right. I'm sure it was in the math probably, and converting fractions to decimals or decimals to fractions. I messed something up somewhere, and after cutting two boards incorrectly, I was like, yeah, I'm not going to do that. So what I ended up doing was well, here, I'll show you. Hopefully the sunlight doesn't screw this up too much. It's kind of in a bad angle, but what I ended up doing, since I couldn't get the formula to quite work out for me, is I ended up just putting a clamp right up here on the end, kind of hanging out a little bit so that I could set a board on it. And then I put another clamp down on that corner the same way, just kind of hanging out a little bit. And then I set my board, my rafter, right on top of it, right at the angle that I kind of wanted it to go. And then I just traced my lines of where I wanted the cuts to go for both where it butts up against the ridge board, as well as where my bird's mouth cut is, or the seat cut, so that it would sit on the top plate of the wall. And that came out pretty good. I had to make a couple of adjustments as I go along because my tracing wasn't quite on, but it is sitting on the top wall. And then I'm also going to add hurricane ties, and I'll show you those later in this video, to give it more support and hold it better to the wall than just screws down in there, since it's not quite as flush as I would like it, but it's going to work. I have 5 more to do on each side, so 10 total. Once I did my tracing on the first initial board, made my cut here, and then flip this around here, cut out my bird's mouth, or I think some people refer to this as a seat cut, but this is where it sits on the top of your wall like that, and it's cut at the same angle as the top of the board, where it sits flush against the ridge board, so that way when you cut it at that angle, it's going to sit right on the top of your wall and give it support. I also did an overhang, and I cut that at the same angle as well, and that's going to allow me to put an outside fascia board, I guess is what it's called, down here on this end, or on the outside end, where I'll be able to attach a gutter later on, because I want to put a water catchment system in. So once I got this first board cut, this is what I use for my template. So then I can just bring my other boards in, my other rafters. And then I just put it on here, and I'll trace out, hope that's on the camera. Put it on here, and then I can just trace my lines at all the different spots without having to worry about remeasuring every time, since I got the first one to work. Now I can just go down, trace out each board, make the cuts, and put it up there. So also in the last episode, when I was doing the framing of the walls, I talked about that I had already brought my ridge beam outside. That was incorrect terminology. I'm using a ridge board, not a ridge beam. The difference is that a ridge beam provides structural support, whereas a ridge board does not. When you're building a shed or a greenhouse, something that's smaller, and I think even in some cases in houses, depending on the size of the room and how it's built or whatever, you don't necessarily need a ridge beam that provides structural support. A ridge board just gives it the ability of your rafters to come in and give it something to butt up into. And so they come together and that holds them there, you know. Depending on the size of what you're building too, a lot of times a ridge board is not even necessary. You can just make your angled cuts for your slope so that the rafters themselves just butt into each other without the need of a ridge board. I didn't know, and I wasn't sure if because of the width and whatever the greenhouse, if I was going to need a ridge board, but I'd seen many built that way, and so I just went ahead and put one in, and so that's what I'm using here. I didn't really have a specific idea of whether I really needed it or not, but that's the way it worked into my plan. So when you're putting your ridge board up, you want to, if you are using a ridge board, definitely one thing that you want to do is sight down it and on both sides and see if on the edge of it, if there's any type of crown, and it should be very slight. If you've got something that has a severe crown in it, when you're looking down the board and it has a big hump in it, get yourself another board. But most lumber nowadays might have a little slight that's you know, somewhat discernible when you're looking down it. If you do see that, you want your crown where the hump is to be on the high side, because over time that will work itself down as you get snow load or whatever, you know, the weight of the building or whatever will cause it to kind of sink down and straighten out. If you have it flipped around where the crown's underneath and that starts to go down, you'll actually get a little sag in your roof, and that's something that you don't necessarily want in a roof. So look for that crown. I put mine up and I had them propped up with a couple of support boards that were temporary. I've already removed the support board from this side because now I've got the rafters holding it up, and once I work down and get closer down to the other end, then I'll remove the support board on the other end, take that out, because then the whole thing will just be held up by the force of the rafters holding it together. So I'm going to go ahead and get these traced out and cut out and work my way through and get the rest of these rafters up. So got the last of the common rafters on, and now I'm going to attach them to the sides, even though there are screws into the walls holding them in, but as an extra precaution, or not really a safety measure. I guess it's a safety measure, but anyway, I'm going to put in these hurricane ties. This is what they look like. Kind of a goofy little bracket. These will be attached with nails, and this is what they look like when they go on. So the hurricane tie just attaches both to the wall and to the rafter. Oops. And so it'll get nailed in like that, and that will give it some extra support to hold against hurricanes. Once I got all the hurricane ties attached, then I started putting cross braces on to run across both sides of the rafters. I'm running out of daylight now though, because I had to run a couple errands today and lost some time. But I'll finish up all the cross braces tomorrow, and then I can start painting, I think, at least the roof. I still got to do all my cross sections of the 2x4s that will go in between where the windows are. But I'd like to get at least the rafters painted and the ridge board painted and the cross beams painted. The unfortunate thing is that I've decided not to use the original corrugated plastic clear sheets that I bought for the roof. They're a little too flimsy, and I wasn't comfortable using them to handle snow load. So what I'm going to do instead is I've now ordered a different kind of corrugated plastic sheathing for the roof that is like a 2-ply 6mm heavy duty type stuff that's actually 4 feet wide instead of 2 feet wide, and hopefully that will work out better. The problem is that it's not due in for 2 weeks, so I really wanted to finish up this roof today to get, or not today, but I wanted to get this roof finished this week with the paint and the sheathing on it, so that at least underneath here was covered where I could store the windows until I get them all mounted and stuff. But that's not going to happen for 2 weeks now. Plus the warm weather is supposed to end, I think, by this weekend, so I'll be out here working in the cold once that roof does get here, or the roof panels. So that's it for today though. Thanks for stopping by and checking out another video on our channel. Please subscribe to our channel if you get a chance, and keep up with our greenhouse build and all of other gardening and homesteading stuff. This greenhouse, as usual with any project that I do, is taking longer than what I wanted it to, but that's the way things go. So I'm happy that all the roof rafters are in, and while I'm waiting for the plastic paneling to come in, I can work on other things, finish up some things with the walls and painting, and then I can start working on the windows. So I think probably the next episode will be, I'll show you a little bit of like the painting and stuff. I won't do a big long episode for that. We'll do probably an update on the painting, and then we'll get into doing all the windows, which is going to be a challenge. So hope to see you again soon. I hope whatever's going on in your neck of the woods, at your homesteads and in your gardens and whatever projects that you're working on, I hope they are going great for you. And I hope that you have a fantastic day. Namaste.